Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. As the war in Ukraine enters its fourth year, U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing for a quick resolution. After meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, Trump reaffirmed his call for a ceasefire, while Macron insisted on security guarantees for Ukraine. Meanwhile, in Ankara, Russian and Turkish diplomats held key talks just a week after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy visited the Turkish capital. Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov met with both President Erdogan and Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. Lavrov signaled that Moscow is open to negotiations, but only if the outcome serves Russia's interests. Türkiye renewed its offer to host future peace talks with Hakan Fidan backing the new U.S. initiative, but only if Russia and Ukraine are at the table. Beyond Ukraine, Lavrov and Fidan tackled Syria and Gaza, warning that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's actions could reignite war. They also found common ground on improving the security situation in Syria as a post-Assad government takes hold. For more, joining me now from London is Chris Doyle. He's the director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding. From Istanbul, Navar Shaban, a conflict analyst at the Omran Center, and also from Istanbul, Hedin Sarı Ertem, associate professor at Istanbul Medeniyet University. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me now. A lot has happened over the past week or so. You have the Americans and the Russians meeting in Saudi Arabia. You have a U.S. delegation heading to Kiev to meet with Zelenskyy. You have the Russian foreign minister and the Turkish foreign minister, the Ukrainian president, the Turkish president. You have Macron in D.C. with Trump. So, Chris, when we look at all this diplomacy right now, how is everyone positioned?
It's really hard to know because it's a frenetic maelstrom of activity with really President Trump being the engine behind it because he's thrown out ideas and suggestions, whether it's on Gaza or Ukraine or tariffs. And he's put the rest of the world into sort of a frenzy. How do they catch up? What does he really mean? What does the US actually intend to do all of these things? And that's not helped by varying contradictory messages from those around Trump as well, saying he didn't quite mean this or that, slight changes in position. So for both Middle East actors and for European actors, they're all playing catch up, having meetings to determine what their common position will be, because I think there is an awareness that unless they act in concert, that the United States and indeed, Russia in terms of Ukraine will pick them all off. So we see, of course, President Macron has been in Washington. Prime Minister Starmer of Britain will be at the White House on Thursday. I think they're going to be, Macron's meeting was pretty difficult, and I think the same will apply to Starmer. But obviously the stakes are very high because you've got two very, very dangerous conflicts in Russia, Ukraine, and indeed what is happening in Palestine. Both of them do need a diplomatic solution. There's no question about that. We need to be able to hold on to the ceasefire in Gaza, to be able to build on it and to make sure that it extends to the West Bank as well, frankly. And of course, we've been marking the very grim and bloody 3-year anniversary of the whole Ukraine war. So let's credit Trump at least with one thing. By setting this rather large cat amongst the swarm of pigeons, he has at least forced other parties to fast-track their diplomacy, their thoughts, their strategies about how to end these conflicts, when I think there was too much complacency about allowing them to continue.
Navar, when you look at all this diplomatic positioning, especially before peace talks regarding Ukraine kick off, who do you see as in, who do you see as out from the table?
Well, first of all, Annie, it's difficult to understand right now who's on the table and who's outside the table. I do believe everyone's now around the table and lots of pitches are happening. But historically, we know that there are some nations that have their main role when it comes to negotiation or when it comes to playing a mediator role between opponents of conflict. the Turk have proposed and offered to host some kind of peace negotiation between the Russia and the Ukraine. On the other hand, Lavrov emphasized on the Turkish role on that, but also said that the Russian military operation will continue until it achieve its like satisfactory result. So basically, there is a lot of things happening right now, but at the same time, we are witnessing right now different files are being presented at the same moment, different conflict, different players. We have Gaza Strip, we have the situation in Syria. We do see that there is an ongoing talk between the Russian and the Turk when it comes to Ukraine, but also when it comes to Syria. There is also the role that the Saudi are playing when it comes to peace talk between the Russian and the Ukrainian, but also there is Gaza. So everything, all these files are either connected directly or indirectly, which make it very complicated and very difficult to have a common ground for everything. So I do believe that right now we are witnessing an old strategy that used to happen, which is like divide files by file, not making all these files collapse together, at least aiming to achieve a possible or a positive result in one file, not making it putting some kind of a negative impact on the other file. We have major players, of course. Some are directly on the issue, and some playing like an intermediate role, aiming to achieve a possible positive result for the region.
Helen, when U.S. President Donald Trump mandated U.S. officials to meet with the Russians, obviously that grabbed headlines, but just underneath the radar, the Turks have hosted both Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Sergey Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, within basically the same week. Is Erdogan showing that he deserves to be at that table? Will Trump call on him? Will he need Erdogan going forward if he's going to be successful for peace in Ukraine?
Well, whether the United States of America accepts it or not, they will need Türkiye in the next episodes, let's say, in order to find a solution to this ongoing conflict, because Turkey is at the center of the region. Turkey is a part of the Mediterranean basin, and Turkey is, because of, the Black Sea basin, and Turkey is a neighbor of Ukraine. So how can you exclude Turkey out of this equation, out of these efforts to find a solution for Ukraine? And plus, if all these issues are interconnected, as our previous guest underlined, how can you exclude Turkey from Middle East, from the conflict in Gaza and Palestine in general? So I should underline that Turkey is at the center of everything, almost all these issues. We are seeing a kind of reflection of a multi-dimensional, multi-actor world. And at this moment, all these actors, whether regional or global, they are included in the table, which is in an effort to find a solution to all these problems. So in my point of view, as we've been following the issue since the very beginning, more than 3 years regarding Ukraine, Turkey is at the center and will be at the center of the solution efforts.
Chris, I think about 5 months ago, if you asked me, does Zelenskyy trust the Americans, I'd probably say definitely yes. But with the arrival of Trump and some of his statements, has the Ukrainians' trust in the U.S. deteriorated? I should say not the U.S. Trump, at least. Let's rephrase that as Trump. And also Zelenskyy being in Ankara the day the Americans and the Russians are meeting, was that a message by the Ukrainians saying, we actually have more faith in Erdogan and want him at the table?
It's not just Volodymyr Zelenskyy that has a lack of trust in the Trump White House. I think that extends to pretty much every actor in this. They're not quite sure what he's going to do. It's so confusing. It certainly puts everyone on edge. And of course, you know, above all, Ukraine, because of some of the comments that Trump has made, that Ukraine was the aggressor, that the United States has spent so much more money than it actually had done on Ukraine. All of this, and then the exclusion of Ukraine in those initial talks in Riyadh. But I think actually what you've got to look at with Trump is less what he says, but what he is trying to do underneath all of this? What is he actually aiming to achieve? Because his rhetoric does change. I think he is genuine in wanting to try to bring about an end to this conflict. I think that is for certain. I think he does. But he also has certain ambitions transactionally. Of course, we know that he wants to get American hands on rare earth minerals that Ukraine holds in exchange for further US support. So everything is a deal. Everything is a way of trying to bully other parties to all of this, including Ukraine. But the challenge for Ukraine here is, of course, they are very dependent on the United States. Without US support, they are extremely vulnerable to Russia. And it's very clear that President Putin of Russia will have seen the last week or two as going very much in his favor. And in fact, he's had to give up absolutely nothing in order to get various promises and moves from the US administration. Zelenskyy will have to try to engage with Donald Trump. He can't avoid him. It would be not wise to do so. But he needs to work with others to come up with viable scenarios and plans to get to a ceasefire in Ukraine, to try to build a plan that Ukraine can run with, and therefore to be able to go to the White House, to be able to go to Trump, to say, look, this is the sort of process that Ukraine can sign up to, and hopefully get European support for doing that as well. But it's going to be very challenging. Let's not try to dodge that. Donald Trump is a law unto himself. One week he might exclude Ukraine, not talk to Zelenskyy, and the next week he may embrace him and call him one of his best friends. So it's a long haul, despite this extraordinary rush of announcements and declarations coming out of the Trump White House. One has to be patient and work and try to find solutions, because that's really the challenge that Trump has set out, both on the Middle East and Ukraine, Russia. What are your solutions? How are you going to reconstruct Gaza? How are you going to end these wars? Come up with better ideas than I put out there, and we'll talk about them.
A lot of very valid questions. Navar, I want to concentrate a little on Lavrov's visit. Now, after the ousting of Assad, everyone expected the Russians basically to be expelled from Syria. They're not. They still have a presence there, albeit a downgraded presence. But the overtures from Damascus to Moscow seem to be, we do still want to have some type of relationship with Russia. Russia still has a place in Syria. How can Russia work with Türkiye to remain relevant in Syria? And does Syria still need Russia?
So basically, that's a very important question. Turkey and Russia in the last few years have been always, I'm not going to say it's the relationship was like a frenemy relationship when it comes to Syria. There was coordination and there was some kind of competition, but also it was divided as files. For example, when we witnessed some kind of feud happening in the Idlib region in the M4, there was cooperation in the Kobani region in El Arab, and there was joint patrols. So there is some common ground when it comes to the Turk and the Russian for the Syrian file. That's why, but here's the difference. Before, in the last couple of years, both of them were on an opposite side. The Russian were supporting the Assad regime, and the Turk were supporting the National Syrian Army and the opposition with the interim government. So basically, there was two local parties on the ground. Now there is no Assad regime. There is only the new Syrian government, which is in a good relationship and good term with the Turk. So basically, the Russian right now need the Turk more to at least secure their interest. But their interest in Syria is on legal document, legal contracts. So it's very difficult for the current Syrian government to push them away. Plus, also there is old contracts from the Assad regime with the Russian. For example, one of the most important thing, the Syrian pound is being printed in Russia throughout an agreement that ends in 2030. So basically, the Syrian current government cannot cut ties, such as Iran. For example, they were clearly about the relationship or the ties or any kind of ties with Iran. They don't want anything to do with Iran right now. But when it comes to the Russian, it's very difficult and it's a complex situation. And the Turk here are playing a very major role when it comes to trying to ease this relationship. The Russian, of course, they don't want to dismantle the interest. They do have still Hmeimim base. They do have Tartus port. Also, they do have presence in a very tiny presence in the desert, Homsi Desert. So basically, the negotiation is happening when it comes to the Russian interest. But here, as I told you, the table have turned. There was previously two local parties. The Turk and the Russian were talking on behalf of them. Now there is only one Syrian government. There is no Assad. The Russian are trying to secure their interest, but they know that they have some kind of like advantage when it comes to talking with the Syrian government. There is old contracts, there is old agreement. You cannot basically say that these agreements are void. There is steps, there is legal steps to be done, and it takes time. And with the current situation of Syria, there is no time to address these like critical or from a legal perspective, there is high concern issues that are being done in Syria, and the Turk knows that. So basically, what's going on right now is just to re-emerge or re-evolve that previous common ground that suit the current situation in Syria.
Mm-hmm. Helen, Erdogan and Putin used to meet a lot of phone calls. I think out of any duo in the international community, they probably met the most over the past 5 to 10 years. But over the past year, there seems to be less bilateral visits, less bilateral phone calls between the two. Now, when we look at the presser, Lavrov said that he briefed the Turks on the US-Russia talks in Saudi Arabia. There's also talk about working together on Ukraine, working together in Syria. What's the current state of the Russia-Turkey relationship? Is it strong enough for both sides to feel confident that they can cooperate together to tackle these major issues?
Well, historically, there has been always a rivalry between Turkey and Russia, but despite that fact, there are also some common grounds, and especially in the last 2 decades, there have been many more common grounds between Turkey and Russia, and there were also crises that we can all remember. But despite this crisis, because of this complex interdependency between these two neighbors, they could find a solution. They could find a way to move on, and they couldn't give up their friendship, let's say, in quote unquote. For that reason, I believe that, yes, there are some problems that they should solve, but there is also an open dialogue between the two leaders that you have mentioned, Erdogan and Putin, namely. For that reason, despite the problems that we might come across in Syria, in Ukraine, there will be an open dialogue between the two leaderships. Regarding Ukraine, Turkey has been playing a key role between the West and Russia in general, between Ukraine and Russia specifically. And this role, as I mentioned before, will continue in the coming weeks or months because it is a very significant country regarding the region. But Turkey's position is quite different when you compare it to another Asian country. Let's say it is a liminal country. We keep talking about the liminality of Turkey as a certain characteristics, and this liminality pushes Turkey to think twice when it's acting either with the West or with the East. It's a kind of a bridge role in between the two continents, and it is also a positive role in my point of view, because two sides actually need a kind of mediator, a facilitator, when the dialogue is cut in between the two sides that we witnessed before with the Biden administration and Putin administration. Today with Trump, as we all see, that there seems to be a strong relationship between Putin and Trump, but this is not a guarantee. There might be many more problems because it's almost impossible to foresee what Trump will do next. In this position, Turkey is quite critical and will be critical as well.
Chris, during the question-answer part of the Lavrov-Fidan joint presser, I was really intrigued at the inquiry regarding Turkey's BRICS application. The Turkish foreign minister said From our understanding, there's a freeze on new membership, that Turkey has not been offered full membership. So obviously, Lavrov being there, Russia being a founding member of the BRICS, Turkey being at the Kazan summit very recently, I believe it was held in November. There's this expectation that Turkey was going to become a full member, at least a partner member, but there haven't been any concrete steps taken. What do you make of that? Is that Trump pressure on the BRICS? Is Turkey reconsidering it? Are the BRICS putting a hold right now and trying to consolidate and reconsider? What's your take on this?
It's very hard to know about the inner workings of BRICS right now, putting this hold on membership. It's not just Türkiye that has been interested in joining BRICS. I think there is an issue in joining BRICS that you could be seen by other parties around the world, including the United States, the Trump administration, as actually being aligned, that you're aligning with one block of groups. But I think really in the long run, the important thing is that all parties realize that, as your previous speaker stated, that Türkiye is actually essential in both of these conflicts as a player, a mediator, a party that largely can talk with most sides and will be essential for the resolution of the Ukrainian issue, of Syria, and to a degree Palestine. So it would be welcome if all these blocs started to open up to each other, to discuss, to get into the diplomacy, and to try to find common ground and ways to go forward. So less to try perhaps to think of a Western bloc or BRICS bloc, but actually trying to bridge those divides.
Navar, after U.S. President Donald Trump announced his plans to turn Gaza into some type of Mediterranean Riviera, there was a lot of blowback throughout the Muslim world. At the press conference between Lavrov and Fidan, they both expressed that they're on the same page regarding Gaza and Palestine. What can Russia do to support Turkey, support the Muslim world or the Arab world regarding plans on Gaza? Can there be a serious counteroffer that can push back against Trump's plan to build hotels or whatever he's planning with Gaza? Obviously, it has nothing to do with Palestinians being in Gaza.
So basically, the main concern here, or the main talks, Turkey and the Arab countries, Muslim country, there shouldn't be any alternative. Gaza need to be rebuilt for the people of Gaza. That's the main like theme when it comes to counter the statement that issued by Trump. I'm changing Gaza Strip into a Riviera, or finding a new place for a temporary new location for Gaza people to, and then put them back. So the whole idea, it's not about what they can keep, what's the alternative. There shouldn't be an alternative. There shouldn't be an alternative for this, because this issue or this suggestion shouldn't happen from the beginning, or shouldn't be even think about. The only thing that need to be focused right now is how to rebuild Gaza, and at the same time how to put some actual obstacles against the Israeli from the same policies they are tending to do since the 7th of October. We're talking about Israel basically reintroduce everyone to the different, to their previous behaviors when it comes to attack in the regions. We are witnessing an expansion in Syria. We are witnessing still attacks in southern Lebanon despite the ceasefire. So basically, there is a lot of things that the Turkey, when it comes to the Israeli, they can intermediate here, because basically also Netanyahu said that we can like halt the expansion that we are doing in Syria and in southern Lebanon only if the Turk proposed some kind of like played some kind of a role on the securing the region.
Helen, I'm running out of time, so very quickly, we talked about Gaza, we talked about Syria, we talked about Ukraine. When you look at these three major international and multilateral issues, what's the most urgent for Turkish interests and for Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan? What does he want to tackle first?
In my point of view, Syria has been a very important crisis. Just nearby Turkey, and it's especially about Turkey's security concerns. For that reason, I guess Turkey's major priority will be Syria. And of course, we cannot give up our cause regarding finding a fair solution for Palestine and Ukraine. Because of Trump, it is also on the table at the moment to find a very urgent solution to the crisis.
Chris, Navar, Helen, thanks for helping me make sense of this diplomatic whirlwind going on around us. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you could find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.